As the Mariners' struggles continue, more and more fans seem to be convinced that this team is just not even worth investing in. Well, Colby and I wholeheartedly disagree with that notion, and we'll tell you why coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Wednesday, July 3rd, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, the athletic columnist and former Yankees baseball operations analyst Andrea Arcadipane tells us what the data says about Julio's struggles this season. Then Colby and I will also discuss this ridiculous idea going around that the Mariners should actually not add at the deadline and even potentially consider just outright selling. But before we do that, shout out to our title sponsor today, PrizePicks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use the promo code LockedOnMLB. That's all lowercase for a first deposit match up to $100. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. So, what is going on with Julio? What does the data say about Julio's struggles right now? We're going to talk to Andrea Arcadipane about just that right now. I'm now joined by Andrea Arcadipane, founder of ScoutGirlReport.com and columnist for The Athletic Fantasy. She also formerly worked in the baseball ops department for the New York Yankees, and she's here to tell us all about what's going on with Julio Rodríguez. Andrea, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So yesterday, 2 days ago, for those of you that are watching, you put out a video kind of breaking down the data around Julio. This is obviously a big talking point in the Mariners community right now. It's a major concern with, obviously, the Mariners are vastly struggling offensively. And as I've said on the show many times, and my co-hosts as well, those issues, they ultimately start with the face of your franchise, Julio Rodríguez, who is not even producing at a league average rate right now. He's not hitting for extra base hits. His pull rate is significantly down, as you talked about quite a bit in your video as well. So let's dive into this a bit more. What is going on with Julio right now? Why is he struggling to the degree that we're seeing at the moment?
Well, I think it all goes back to like the pitches that he has the most trouble against, which in his case, it's off speed and breaking pitches. And that's like very common for a lot of players. But since he's done so well in past years, I think pitchers are making an extra effort to target him, especially in like damage counts. So if you look into like hitters counts and first pitch versus right-handed hitters and left-handed pitchers and right-handed pitchers, he's getting a lot more breaking and off-speed stuff. And as a result, he's a little more off balance. He's swinging and missing. He's fouling off a lot of pitches because he's not barreling the ball. So, and which I'm sure fans have picked up on. And Rodríguez is the type of hitter who, like, historically has been very aggressive up front. And then if he falls behind, he's like a little more conservative and picky. But I don't know if that approach is necessarily working for him in this case because he's so aggressive and he doesn't hit breaking stuff as well. And they're throwing more first pitch. He's falling behind a lot more. So it's causing him to have more of like a protection kind of style at bat as opposed to free swinging and having control like he's used to.
So I guess the question then that's on everyone's mind is how do you fix that, especially mid-season, right? When he spent this whole off season working on swing changes with his hitting coach. He recently had his personal hitting coach come out to Seattle, work with him on the off day that they had once they got back home. That hasn't really produced anything different so far that we've seen. But yeah, how do you kind of change this on a dime? Because I've said this again, especially with the way that it seems the market is going to take shape. It really doesn't matter who you add at the deadline. The most impactful addition you can make this year midseason is Julio getting it together. So how does that happen?
Right. And the good news is I do think he is the type of player who is like willing to adapt and make changes because of kind of what you said about the swing changes that he's made. Like just watching a few videos, you could see that he's like more upright this year. His hands are higher up. Like he's open to trying new things. It's not helping with the contact rates, that new approach, but I wonder if that's just because he doesn't actually see like the movement of breaking pitches very well. So I think it comes down to a potential change in approach, maybe becoming a little less aggressive, especially if the pitcher that he's about to face has a really good slider or a really good curveball that they throw first pitch. Maybe he recognizes that and goes to an at-bat ready to lay back a little bit. So just switching things up, like being more picky up front as opposed to falling behind. Like aggressive approaches are not necessarily bad, but in these kinds of cases, when you have a weakness that is now being exploited, maybe that's something that you need to rethink and just pull back on, at least in the short term, so you could change it up and not be so, I don't want to say easy, but like opposing teams know that this is a weakness now and it's being exploited. So might be better and it would throw other teams off if he changed his approach a little bit.
So let's talk a little bit about kind of the trickle down effect that both Julio has negatively and what he could have positively on this offense if he does kind of turn it around. Again, this is one of the worst offenses the Mariners have fielded in team history so far. They spent all offseason trying to cut down the heavy strikeout issues that they had this year and brought in guys that have historically not struck out that much in years past. And yet those guys like Jorge Polanco, Mitch Garver, they're all striking out at career high rates. So how much do you think Julio, outside of just he'll give you, production that is more in line with what you were expecting, how much does that also help some of the guys around him?
Right. Well, he plays a major role, and they say that like offense is contagious, and that's not, backed up by fact, I don't think, but I do think that plays a part. Like when the team is doing well and there's like a nice vibe in the clubhouse, everyone starts feeling good. And I mean, the Mariners are still in first, so they're doing well. Like there should be a positive feeling in there, but I think it would be a big deal if he was able to get it together and step up, and then everyone would follow suit. And the strikeouts are a problem. Like, and just in general, there's not really a ton of power coming from that lineup. I think I saw before Luke Raley was the guy who was hitting the most consistent power, and he's not. Yeah. I wouldn't consider him like someone I would confidently want as my starting left fielder. And he's a high strikeout hitter, so that was something that you said they were trying to avoid, which you're not going to avoid that from him. And he's more of like a power upside hitter. Like I wouldn't field him and say, okay, this guy is definitely going to hit for power all year. So, and then there's been other disappointments in like Haniger, and I mean, Raleigh's been good, but he's a catcher. He's doing very well, but the offense shouldn't rely on him. So yeah, I think that if, Julio gets going, then hopefully like others will follow, but I agree that they could use some additional help. And on top of that, like I don't necessarily subscribe to like the whole team needing to be completely balanced. Like the pitching is so good that could get them far on its own, but it would be nice if they could like show more consistency in the offense. Yeah,
I think they desperately need to at least try and get back to close to average as an offense on the whole. And yeah, they have a lot of work ahead of them over the next few weeks here. Fortunately, at least they have one of the best farm systems in baseball to trade from. But the market, especially with all those teams kind of bunched up in the National League wildcard race right now, it's going to be difficult to get the help that you truly need. How do you think the market in general might end up playing out this year?
I've been having trouble answering that question because like of the expanded playoffs.
So do I, by the way.
But like, I do feel like there is like a huge financial incentive to just get into the playoffs, and teams are okay with being like mediocre enough to just get in. So because of that, I think that we'll see like a 50-50 approach. Like, okay, we'll make a trade to make our team marginally better, but not like an explosive deal like we used to see maybe more often, like before the expanded playoffs. So I don't know. I do think that there are some players that are going to be impactful if they're traded. But hitters, like power hitters and consistent hitters are obviously very hard to come by. Like, I'm having trouble thinking of one off the top of my head that might be traded this year because they're all on the competitive teams.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. I thought maybe Brandon Lau from the Rays would be like a bat that might go because he has 2 club options coming up and he's going to be too expensive for the Rays to keep on. So that would be like a middle infield power bat that might be appealing for the Mariners. But I don't know. We'll see.
So, Andrea, before I let you go, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you hopping on here and talking about Julio with us some. Let us know what you got going on right now. What's new in your world, especially after you wrapped up with the Yankees and all that.
Yeah, so I wrapped up with the Yankees last year, and that was like a really cool experience because I got to work on player evaluation, the trade deadline with them, like arbitration, all that kind of stuff. So I learned a lot. And then after that, I've just been trying to stay involved in baseball however I can. So like making videos about like the arbitration process, player evaluation, like how I think players will do moving forward, and just like adding on Twitter and contributing to The Athletic on a monthly basis, and depending on the time of year, more than that. And I do columns for them about like scouting. So I analyze players from more of like a traditional scouting lens, which is very cool.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for being on here. Let the people know where they can find your work.
Yeah, you could follow me on Twitter or X at Scout Go Report. I also have a YouTube channel that you could subscribe to, and my website, scoutgoreport.com.
And it's great stuff. I've been following Andrea for years now. She does great work. Absolutely check it out. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again to Andrea for hopping on and talking to us a little bit about Julio. Now it's time for Colby and I to address what is, for some reason, the biggest topic of discussion in this fan base right now. I mean, look, the team is really struggling right now, but we got people that are ready to just wave the white flag on this team, even though they're still 3 games up in the division. There are some people out there, folks, that straight up want this team to just sell at the deadline. So we're going to get into that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Booking.com and Game Time. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, I'm talking about your rival cities. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city. Even a Mariners fan can have a great time down in Houston, whether you're watching Cal Raleigh hit one into the Crawford boxes or chowing down on some authentic Texas barbecue. Maybe you're doing both at the same time. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or the Booking.com app. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and I get to see the view of every seat in the house, so I know exactly what I'm buying. Game Time's last-minute deals give you up to 60% in savings buying last minute for sports, music, comedy, and more. And to avoid any surprises at checkout, you can turn on their all-in pricing to see the full cost, fees included. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Once again, you can catch the Mariners and the Orioles tonight and tomorrow afternoon on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. And by the way, folks, no show tomorrow. We're going to enjoy the holiday, and we'll catch you guys on Friday for Fan Fiction Friday. And maybe this Fan Fiction Friday will do something a little bit different because, again, some of you want to sell. You want this team to sell for whatever reason. So let's switch things up on Fan Fiction Friday. Let's see your best ideas for selling at the deadline. How about that? And we'll react to those trades. So yeah, you look at our comment sections on yesterday's show, there were some people that were like, this team isn't a buyer, they're actually a seller. And then after last night's disaster, which again was a disaster, like you don't score any runs, you only get 2 hits, and both of those hits come from the same guy. Doesn't matter how good Grayson Rodriguez is and how good the Orioles bullpen is, you have to do better than that. That's unacceptable. But there's more people on Twitter after last night's game saying, hey, yeah, this team should sell. They suck. This is who they are. They definitely shouldn't buy. At least they shouldn't anything from this farm system. They should keep that intact and just roll into next year and just try next year, basically. No, Colby, what are your thoughts?
People are reactionary. Right. Every loss is the worst loss that we've ever seen. Every offensive performance is the worst performance we've ever seen. The Mariners have never looked this bad this year. You know, if you ignore the first 2 weeks of the season when they had the exact same record as they have the last 2 weeks of, the most recent 2 weeks. So, yeah, for 4 weeks of the season, the Mariners have been a bad baseball team. For the other 8 to 10 weeks, they've been pretty darn good. Pretty freaking good. And we know they have the pitching. We know that they have better offense in-house right now than we've seen. Julio is better than this. JP actually been pretty solid lately, but JP is a little bit better than this. Cal can find more consistency than this. We have track record that says Polanco and Garver are better than this. Are they actually? I don't know. I guess we're about to find out. But there are reasons to be fairly optimistic about in-house guys getting a little bit better. But yeah, obviously you have to go out and you have to add guys from outside of the org to really push this thing over the top. But the crazy thing to me is that it's July 3rd. Okay, the trade deadline is in 4 weeks, and the Mariners are in first place. What are you talking about that they shouldn't buy? That, in fact, they should sell. They are in first place by 3 games.
It's so dumb. It's so dumb.
Yeah, they're up by 3 games.
Yeah.
Like, they could have a disastrous next 4 weeks and be back 3 games back of Houston, and they should still buy. This is your shot. Winning the division is different than getting into the playoffs. Winning the division gets you a home playoff series guaranteed. It might get you a bye. And we know how good this team is at home. You have the starting pitching to get this done. You have enough bats in-house who should improve that if you go out and you get the right mix of players on the trade deadline, the offense should be good enough. It should be average, and that's all you need it to be. You have a bullpen that's really held its own and is getting some of the pieces back together as well. And again, I cannot stress this enough. You're in first place.
Well, also, we saw this offense produce at a league average rate, basically from the Brant Brown firing leading up to the Cleveland series when this started to fall apart. And they just won series after series after series, just being a league average offense. And that was still without Julio being anywhere close to what you need him to be.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the proof of concept. You need to add to this ball club. I mean, hell, considering what you are fielding right now on a regular basis, 3 league average bats would make a world of difference right now. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They should do more. I'm not saying they should. They should do more. But this notion that it's a matter of, well, they should just do nothing or they're going to just sell off their entire farm is ridiculous. And by the way, if they do make a big trade, their farm's still in a really, really good shape. And also, say what you want about this front office, they're really good at the draft. And guess what's coming up in 2 weeks, folks? The draft. Oh my God, they're going to be able to replenish this farm system right now.
Yep.
And oh, by the way, they have a couple of dudes lined up to sign in the international signing period in January as well.
Mm-hmm. It is virtually impossible for the Mariners to gut the farm system at the deadline this year. Like,
yeah.
It's pretty much impossible because they could trade 6 of the top 10 in their system at this deadline and still, honestly, probably be top 15 farm system in all of baseball. Like, that is what drafting and developing does. It lets you be aggressive on the trade market. And this idea that I don't want to break up the farm. Why? Because you don't want to miss out on Kyle Lewis or Evan White or Jared Kelnick or the countless number of other prospects that came through the system during the rebuild who failed for one reason or another? Yeah, you hit on Julio, you hit on Kirby, you hit on Gilbert. You know who you didn't hit on, or you know who you don't miss more specifically? Noel V. Marte. You don't miss Noel V. Marte at all because you went and you got Luis Castillo. Right. You don't miss Brandon Williamson at all. You don't miss Levi Stout at all. Right. So this idea that the Mariners can't break up their farm because this is the only way they can win. You don't know if any of these guys are going to be good.
Yeah.
We don't know that Laz Montes can hit major league pitching. We're making educated guesses that Harry Ford can catch. That Cole Young isn't just some 230 slap hitter who can't play defense. We're making assumptions on guys who are not even close to being big league everyday players. And you don't want to break that up for guys who have a track record of being proven big league players. And by the way, if you're trading a Laz Montes, if you're trading a Harry Ford, if you're trading a Cole Young, probably a track record of being all-star quality Major League Baseball players. But you don't want to break up this group that you've kind of fetishized in your head that they're going to be the ones to win the World Series because why? Because you're afraid that you might trade away Julio instead of thinking, well, we might trade away Evan White. Instead, we might trade away Edwin Arroyo instead. Prospects fail all the time. And even the great organizations, their hit rate on prospects is less than 50%. You're going to have washout in any farm system. You're going to have players who do not produce, and you're going to look at that and you're going to go, oh man, I guess we probably should have traded them when their value was high back for this proven player. It's the same concept we talk about all the time. It's the same joke we make every year, but it just remains true because not just Mariner fans, but just fan bases in general become very attached to their prospects and this idea of what this guy could be. And it's the same joke we make every year. Laz Montes could be anything, right? Why would I want Isaac Paredes? Laz Montes could be anything. He could even be Isaac Paredes, right? It's that same idea. Do you want the mystery box or do you want the boat? Well, I need the boat. Like, I have to have the boat right now. So I'll take that. And you know what? If the mystery box in 5, 6, 7 years ends up being a plane, well, that sucks. But hey, I had the boat for 3 years. And the boat helped me get off the island, so to speak. So, yeah, it's just this idea that, you know, I don't want to break up the prospects because 2026 is the peak. And, oh, we could have all these young players who are so cheap. Oh, we're going to be the Baltimore Orioles. And it's like, first of all, let's not pretend that the Baltimore Orioles haven't dipped into their farm system to go out and get players to make them better. Hello, Corbin Burns. That wasn't cheap. That wasn't free. They had to dip into their farm system to go get something they didn't have. The Mariners do not have enough major league quality hitters right now. What they have an abundance of is really good prospects. Mm-hmm. This isn't rocket science, people. It's very basic capitalism. I have something you want. You have something I want. Let's work out a deal. Let's work out a barter here. And you know what? Maybe you get the better end of it this time around. Maybe in the long run, you'd rather have what I'm giving you. But I need to survive now. My interest is in what is happening today, tomorrow, the next day. Not in 2028. You know when I'll worry about 2028? In 2028, that's when I'll worry about it. And you know what? You're still going to have money left in the bank for that rainy day in 2028 because you're going to continue to draft. You're going to continue to develop. And again, you're not shedding the entire farm system at this deadline. You could go get Bo Bichette, Luis Robert, and Yandy Diaz, and you would still have ammo in your farm system left.
Colby and I will pick up this conversation in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. And even though the finals are over, the hoops action doesn't stop on PrizePicks. Women's basketball is still heating up with stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves alongside greats like Breanna Stewart and Asia Wilson. You can win up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. The other thing too about the 2028 thing is like you're going to have 4 drafts in between now and then. You're going to have 4 or 5 international signing periods in between now and then. And you're probably going to make at least 1 or 2 moves that are more so selling oriented, because even good teams do that, right? Like they want to make room for X player or what have you, right? Or they want to rearrange their financial situation, all that, whatever. Like, and you'll get prospect capital from that as well.
If I told you very simply, don't make any trades this deadline, and by the middle of 2025, you'll have the best farm system in baseball. Or make 3 trades, give up half of your top 10 right now, but you have a 50% chance to go to the World Series. If you don't pick the 50% chance to go to the World Series, if you don't pick that option, you've lost your ever-loving mind. You've lost the plot. You're off the reservation. Like, you are beyond help.
Yeah.
Because I've said this before and I'll say it again. You don't give a damn about what the Modesto Nuts do. You know how I know that? Because you don't watch the Modesto Nuts. You watch the Seattle Mariners. This is not Locked On Aqua Sox. You watch the Seattle Mariners. Okay.
Yeah.
That is the team you care about.
Yeah.
And I know you don't care about the 2028 Seattle Mariners. You know how I know that? Because you don't. I don't care about the 2028 Seattle Mariners. And I care more than all of you listening about this ball club, because it's my livelihood. It is literally my livelihood that this team perform well. And I don't give a damn about who's going to play second base in 2028. It's 2024.
Yeah.
And I have a chance to win the American League West for the first time in 23 years.
Yeah.
And I'm going to sit here and be like, oh, well, they've had a really bad 2 weeks. I guess we should probably just hoard
It's ridiculous.
Michael Arroyo, who's 19 years old and just got to A-ball.
It's
like,
so
what are
ridiculous.
we talking about?
It's not just your best chance to win the AL West in 23 years. It's your best chance to win a championship in 23 years. And that's what we ultimately, right? This is what, like, for the longest time, because of the drought, it just got turned into like, well, let's just make the playoffs, and that's kind of it. And that's kind of like our goal, right? No one really had any sort of dream. There was no sort of discussion, even from the team itself, about winning a championship. It was just, we got it in the drought. We got it in the drought. All right, well, we ended the drought. What's the next step after that? I guess winning a division, but I don't want to just settle for that. I want to win a freaking championship, dude. And I want this team right now to do whatever it can within its power to do that. It has one of the best farm systems in baseball to trade from. Yeah, it's a limited market. Yeah, there probably aren't going to be that many bats that actually end up getting moved this deadline. But that doesn't mean you don't try, right? I'd be significantly more upset and critical of Jerry DiPoto and Justin Hollander if they did nothing or sold than if they tried and it didn't work.
We're 3.5 weeks from the deadline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're in first place. Buy. Ain't no lie.
Right. Scared money don't make none, all that good stuff, right? Just go after this thing. Do whatever you can in your power to add as much impact as possible at this deadline. And anything short of that is a failure.
Indeed.
All right. That's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.